Welcome, guys, to the Deviant Core podcast. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. My name is Drew Dukes. I am your host, and today we're going to be talking about a lot. There's a lot this week that has been going on, and I want to share that with you. But first, we're going to get into some conversation. I think that's important, centering around the idea of building self-discipline within yourself, and why it's important. But before we get into that, for those guys who are listening, go ahead and head on over to our Facebook page. Go ahead and like and follow at the Deviant Core podcast. And also, we're on YouTube if you want to go ahead and watch the videos and full-length podcast at the Deviant Core podcast. Go ahead and check us out there. Like us, subscribe. And for those of you guys who are listening, we're also on Apple Podcasts. We're on Spotify at the Deviant Core Podcast. You can also find us at Overcast and Stitcher at the Deviant Core Podcast. So, with that being said, a little self plug there. Let's go ahead and get into it. So, now, what is self-discipline, and why is it very, very important? So let's talk about this for a second, because I feel like this is the one thing that in this world a lot of people are lacking, and it's due to the numerous amount of circumstances, right? It can be first of all, the obvious, your parents not teaching you something like that everyone should be yet learning, and two, it could be us not recognizing that we don't have that self-control, we don't have that discipline to really hone in and focus and to do what needs to be done in order to be successful. Developing that routine, developing that mindset where it's like, hey, you know what? I got things to get done. All right, and I need to get it done. I don't have time to be procrastinating. I don't have time to be playing around. I don't have time to be playing these games. I have stuff to do. And having that self-discipline, that is what's going to help you get over that hump and keep yourself consistent so you can get to your goal. So now, why is it important when we're talking about this? Why is it important to have self-discipline, right? Well, first things first, without self-discipline, it becomes very difficult for you to accomplish anything. Now you're talking about, Drew, what do you mean? What do you mean? I think I have self-discipline, but what do you mean it's impossible for me to accomplish anything? Look at this, all right? If you guys take a look at life and the way I look at it, as a game, right? You need some level of focus to help you get you through, because in a game, you have a bunch of side missions and side quests that you got going on that you got to go ahead and do. And sometimes those side missions and side quests that you take on are a little bit of a distraction from the main storyline, from the main plot. Similar to if you bring it back to the real world, right? So you're in the real world and this is life. Well, guess what? We know life is filled with a ton of distractions. So it becomes, without self-discipline, it becomes very, very easy for you to fall into the pit sides and the distractions and the manipulations that come with life, right? Because you have to understand, the fundamental law is that everyone out there has their own motivations, and they also understand to a certain degree that they need people to be successful. So if they see that you unwillingly or willingly can help them further their agenda or goal, and you're not aware of yourself, you're not disciplined enough, and you don't know where you want to go, it becomes easy for you to fall right into the same trap. And there are a lot of people out there who are ready to trap you, because there's a lot of trappings in life. And if you don't have that self-discipline, it's very easy to not see it and fall right into it. So what are other reasons why self-discipline is important, right? Well, think about this. Let me ask you guys a question. Have you guys ever had a situation where well, think about this. Think about a moment where there was something you had to get accomplished, something you had to get done that day, and for some reason you just don't got the energy, you're just not feeling it, whatever that reason may be. There's something for you to get done, but you just don't feel like doing it. Well, guess what? I'm sure many of you guys have had that feeling. I'm sure many of you guys have procrastinated on work that need to get done. But here's where self-discipline comes into play, right? Self-discipline when it comes to the play, it helps you push through those tough times, push through that procrastination, because you understand that there's something that needs to get done, something very important that is towards your long-term goal and satisfaction, right? So you push through because you understand the gravity of that goal. That's what happens when you have self-discipline. So let me give you guys an example, right? And it comes in different forms, right? If you think about someone, or this may even be yourself, where, let's say, you started a fitness routine, or you decided to just start going to the gym, start to work out because, you're not proud of your body. You're not proud of where you are right now physically. And I know some of y'all, you've had that thought. I've had that thought myself, but you're not proud of where you are physically. So what happens? You go to the gym, right? And you start off fast, right? You start lifting weights, you run in, you're doing all this stuff, right? A week goes by, you check yourself, you don't see results. A couple weeks go by, you check yourself, you're still doing the same thing, you don't see results, right? So then you quit. Because you're not seeing that immediate result. You're not seeing that immediate, gratification of you putting in a week working out to lose weight. So then you start to convince yourself, like, you know what, maybe it's not for me, or maybe I'm not able to lose weight, right? You get about 20%, 25% there, 20 to 25% there. You start off and you don't finish. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a lack of self-discipline. That is someone who lacks self-discipline, because someone with self-discipline who sets a goal for themselves, a fitness goal for themselves, they say, hey, this is where I want to be. Okay, I am sick and tired. I am sick and tired of looking at myself the way I am right now. Something has to change. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to push through all this. Matter of fact, I'm not even going to pay attention to myself. I don't want to look at myself in the mirror. I'm just going to keep working. I'm going to keep working every day. If I got to do 5 push-ups, 10 push-ups, I'm going to keep doing 5 and 10 push-ups every single day. And while I'm building that, I'm not going to look at myself, because at the end goal, I know exactly where I want to be. And the pain hurts so bad. That I don't want to be in this spot, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to get there. So if that means waking up every morning and doing 5 push-ups, well, guess what? I'm going to do it. And you do it. 1 week goes by, you do 5 push-ups. Now 5 push-ups becomes nothing. Next week goes by, you do 10 push-ups. All of a sudden, 10 push-ups is not a thing anymore. Then next week goes by, you're doing more and more and more and more and more. Before you know it, you walk past your mirror in the bathroom, and you look at the mirror, and all of a sudden, there's a little muscle line. You got a little muscle line growing up right there. And flexing, you're looking yourself in the mirror. All of a sudden, people outside of you starting to notice. They're starting to notice that change within you, that physical change. They start to compliment you. Say, hey, man, you're looking good. Hey, girl, you're looking good. What's up? You hitting the gym? You squatting? Oh, I see you. Keep doing your thing. Before you know it, here's the crazy thing. This is how your mind works. This is how crazy your mind works, right? Now, think about what you've been doing those past couple of days, or those past couple of weeks, months. You've been doing those push-ups and sit-ups and mini workouts, right? Well, guess what? You worked at it. You built day in and day out. You were doing the exact same thing. You were being consistent, and every single day you woke up and you allotted this time to do this X amount of workout. Well, guess what? Eventually, that becomes part of what we call a routine. A routine. You just develop a routine, and a routine is an absolute key piece to being successful. You cannot be successful without having some form of routine. And this doesn't even have to stretch physically. This even goes to finance, right? Finance. I commit, right? I'm tired of spending my money. I always spend my money, Drew, all the time. I'm broke. I got 2 cents to my name, and every time I get paid, I can't help myself. But to spend. Same thing, right? I'm sure you guys know someone out there who's like that. They run into a situation where things get hard financially, and they just quit. They don't have that discipline to say, hey, you know what? It ain't no thing to at least save $20. It really ain't no thing to save $20 and just put $20 away to whatever I want to do in the future. You know, maybe it's retirement. Maybe it's putting a pool together to buy a house later on. But if I can start with just putting $20 away and not even look at it, just like we're not looking in the mirror. I don't want to look at it. Every month, I take $20 out and I deposit it in an account that I know has a goal attached to it. And every single day you wake up, just like working out, you are depositing that $20. And you do it week by week, month by month, and eventually, a year later, you come in, you check, you got a stack of $20 bills, yay high. All of a sudden, it looks like a lot of money, doesn't it? Because you took the time, you had the discipline, you developed the discipline and the routine to get to that point where now you have a stack of $20 bills you can toss towards a little investment that you want to make. Same thing goes for relationships. The exact same thing goes for personal relationships. Think about it. Think about how many people, guys, girls, how many people you've dated out there where, or even people in longer, more serious relationships, let's talk about marriage or things like that, right? When things get hard, your partner wants to run away. They don't build that discipline to stick around and say, you know what? No, I'm staying here. We're going to work on this. We will work on this. I don't want to run away thinking that the grass is going to be green on the other side, because 9 times out of 10, it usually isn't. I'm going to tell you that right now. It usually is not. So rather than taking the time to deal with the problems, people run away because they don't have that discipline. They don't have that discipline to say, hey, we're going to establish some form of communication here. We're going to establish some kind of common ground here so we can understand each other a lot more. We can understand that, hey, are our goals in line? Seriously. Some of us, we partner up with people where we just do it out of just blind emotion, no discipline, no thinking, no foresight involved, and we don't realize that person probably isn't right for us. Think about it. How many people have made that mistake? I have. You made the mistake of joining up with somebody who, at some point later down the road, you find yourself looking at them and thinking, how, in what way are we compatible? But it takes that discipline. That's where it's very important. Now, we're talking about self-discipline and whatnot, whatever. Okay. Well, what exactly does it entail? What does it entail to be self-disciplined? Well, we already talked about a key piece of it already. We talked about routine. Now, let's break that down even further. What is a routine? A routine is literally a form of goal setting. That's it. Like we talked about before, you set the goal for 5 push-ups a day. I'm going to commit. That's the second part, because you're going to need commitment. Right? That's the second piece in terms of self-discipline. First, you need the goal setting piece, which is routine. And for a lot of you guys out there, you don't want to set your goals too high. When you set your goals too high, it becomes too big and too complex for you to take on. You got to start little by little. Take it little by little by little. Before you know it, you've eaten the old pie. You've eaten the whole thing. So you start small and don't pay attention to it. You start small with that little goal of, I am going to start with 5 push-ups a day. That's it. Let's see where this goes. I'm not even going to pay attention to it. 5 push-ups a day. And then before you know it, it becomes easy. And your brain now wants to challenge itself. Well, screw it. If I can do 5, let's try 10. Well, shit, if I can do 10, let's try 15. Let's try 20. Let's try 25. Let's try 40, 50, 100. Before you know it, walking past the mirror, your shoulders are all yoked. Shoulders all walking around like Incredible Hulk, looking crazy, looking mean. But you worked for it. You set that goal. You developed the routine, right? And most importantly, you committed. And that's a big thing in terms of self-discipline, because it requires, but when it comes to building self-discipline, it requires you to be committed. When you set that goal, that initial routine, when you set out for that initial routine, you have to understand that I have to commit. The vast majority of people, like we talk about in our fitness example, when you get 25% of the way there, well, guess what? You quit. You quit because in your mind you thought you committed, but you truly never committed to it. You set the goal, but you truly never committed to it. Y'all don't believe me? Y'all don't believe me. All right. Any one of you guys who has ever been to a gym on New Year's or around that time, and then about a week later, come back to that same gym, you know what I'm talking about. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Because right at there, New Year's, everyone's making this resolution. Yeah, I'm going to lose so much weight. It's going to be great. I'm going to have my beach body. This is what's going to happen. So you go to the gym, and you start running. You hit it hard. You start going, right? You think you made a commitment, but you didn't really. You didn't really. Well, you didn't really make the commitment to the person that mattered. And the person that mattered was you. You really didn't commit to yourself. So a week later, you didn't see the results, and you just quit. It's not for me. And here's the crazy thing about your brain. It's going to work against you too, because it wants to keep you safe. So what it's going to do, it's going to rationalize and come up with excuses on why you couldn't get it done and why you couldn't accomplish. And you'll make up all these different reasons other than what the true reason was. You simply did not commit. Simple as that. It's that simple. So think about this for example. Let's dive deep, right? Because if we're even diving deep into the fitness piece there, right? And I don't. Here's my thing. When I see people who are overweight, what I see is the physical representation. When I'm seeing someone who's overweight, I am looking at the physical representation of the lack of work ethic. That's what I'm seeing, right? And newsflash, that's what subconsciously the vast majority of people see, right? That's what we talk about when we're talking about in terms of attractiveness. What's more attractive, someone who's obese or someone who's not? If you can really honestly think about it and talk about it, you probably go with someone who's not, because obesity comes with its own level of health problems. I got family members, man, who've had health issues due to just having a lot of weight, heart problems due to having a lot of weight, right? So what does that tell me when I see someone who's obese walking around? When people out there see people who are obese walking around, subconsciously that tells you that there's a lack of self-discipline there. There's a lack of self-discipline there. Contrast to you see a bodybuilder, right? Well, what do you see when you see someone? Let's not even go with bodybuilder. This is someone who's just relatively fit. We go with someone who's relatively fit. What do we see? We see that, hey, this person is dedicated enough to hit the gym however many times a week, and he got that body or she got that body and she earned it. Versus the other person, have you even stepped foot in the gym? Honestly, have you set foot in the gym? If not, now let's start to figure out what we can do to get you in there and start building that routine. Same thing as being relationships, right? The vast majority of y'all right now, the vast majority of every single one of you out there right now are single. And for most of you guys in that category, you're single because you fled a relationship that you didn't want to take responsibility and commit to put in the work. And now you're single. You blame everything else. You put the blame on all the other things. Oh, I'm too this, or oh, they're too that, or everything else but what really freaking mattered. The fact that you didn't stay and commit. Now, of course, there's certain situations where if you got to leave a dude, you got to leave a girl because they're just crazy. I support you. You got to do it. Keep your mental state in mind and healthy. But vast majority of us, we're single because we don't take the time to work on our efforts. Same thing with finances. The vast majority of us are in debt. The vast majority are broke. Why? Because we can't have the self-discipline. We lack the self-discipline to save for something better. So, how do you start building that discipline for yourself? How do you start right now to start building that self-discipline? Well, first thing you need to do is develop a routine. Develop a routine, right? Around that goal, around that pain point that you have. That pain point that drove you to set that goal in the first place. Whether it's, I need to get my finances in order. Set that goal. Okay, you know what? I'm going to divert at least $20 a month. At least. Something, a little bit to start putting myself in a better cash position or financial position. I'm going to start with $20. And you start small. And you keep building. And you keep building. And you keep building. But the most important thing is, don't pay attention to it. Once you start and you set that routine, get it out of your mind. Don't think about it anymore. Don't think about it anymore. You set out and you just have to now commit to just doing it. Eventually it becomes a pattern, but you have to commit yourself until it becomes that pattern. Because if you don't commit and you're always paying attention to that, well, guess what? In the example of fitness, you're not going to see results right away, and that might discourage you. An example of the financial, you're putting $20 a month every month. Well, guess what? If you're constantly staring at that pile and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, guess what happens? Temptation happens. That's what happens. Because you look at that big pile of cash that's building up, and you can't help to think that there's something I could spend this money on. Temptation, which is another big trappings in life, right? You got to watch out for. That's where self-discipline comes into play. When you get to that point where temptation starts to knock at your door, it's like, hey, no. I am disciplined. This is where I want to go, and this is where I want to be in the future. And temptation, you are not going to stop me. I'm sorry. It's just not going to happen. All right? And last and final thing for that is keep adding to it. Keep adding to it. Mix it up. Because every once in a while, if we're just being real, a routine could get boring at times. For me, I get bored pretty easy. So when I start a routine, I like to mix it up, right? So whether it's doing push-ups every morning, right? Well, now you can mix it up a little bit, right? Instead of doing normal push-ups, you can do an incline push-ups. Put your feet up on a couch or something. Start going to town, right? You can do something forms, right? You can do push-ups with dumbbells. Same thing with your finances. Mix it up a little bit. Every once in a while, you start, you know what? Maybe I'll toss $100 in there. You know, I got a raise at work. I'm going to toss a little bit extra in there. Mix it up. Keep it interesting. Keep it challenging for you. And that's pretty much it. Once you build up all three of those things, you will have the self-discipline. You will have it. But it takes the work, the recognition, and commitment. And that's pretty much it with that segment. Guys, if you are just tuning in, first of all, thank you. Welcome to the Deviant podcast. My name is Drew, and I'm happy to have you. Thank you so much for listening. For those of you guys who are listening right now, thank you. We're also on Facebook at the Deviant Core Podcast. You can check us out on YouTube too as well. Head on over to those platforms, the Deviant Core Podcast. Subscribe. Like our page. Help us grow if you're messing with the message that we have right here on the show. Did that rhyme? I think it rhymed. But for those of you guys who want to listen to the full-length episodes, we're also on Apple Podcasts. We're also on Spotify. We're on Stitcher and Overcast. So go on over to those platforms and check us out there. Support. Download the podcast. Hear us out if you like the message we're putting out there. All right. So heading into our next story here, as those of you guys know, what the Deviant Core podcast is all about, we talk about building your mind, We also obviously talk about finances and building your strength and understanding and growing in terms of wisdom and things like that. So we focus on those aspects. So one of the stories I want to talk about today is not really even a story, but I'll link articles here as reference points. But one of the things I want to talk about is the nature of our economy. Yes, folks, we're about to get into some serious money right now because things are not looking the greatest. Things are not looking the greatest for our economy. We are we are looking at, in terms of the state of the dollar, the state of employment, the state of food in this country. We are heading towards a time right now where it's going to be shocking for a lot of people. Where the era we're going in is going to be shocking for a lot of people. And let's talk about it for a second. Let's go over it for a second. First of all, a lot of us don't understand the nature of money, of what money really is, right? We think the currency, the little dollar bill that we have in our pockets right now, we think that is some form of currency. We think that is actual money, right? We think that, you know what, this $5 bill I have in my pocket, this $10 bill in my pocket, this is money. But you're wrong. It's really not, right? It's currency and it's useless. It's worthless. And for those guys, I want to break down a little bit the difference between what money actually is and what currency actually is, because this is going to be a big deal, because I believe we are going to be headed towards a major currency crisis. I think Americans right now are going to be losing faith in their dollars, in their currencies. Obviously, seeing what the government's doing and how much money they're just tossing into the economy with little disregard of the future consequences of what's going to happen. Well, yeah, it's not going to be good. So, what is money? Well, first of all, it's a medium of exchange, meaning you can take it anywhere and it's widely accepted. It's widely accepted, meaning if I have $1, for example, and I go to the store and I want a tomato, and that tomato is also $1, I can exchange my dollar for that tomato. It's a medium of exchange. It has your value in it, right? It's also portable, meaning you can carry anywhere. You can take it with you wherever you want to go, however you want to go. You can take it anywhere. Okay, what else is money? It's durable, so I can spend it as many times as I want, and it doesn't degrade. It doesn't lose. It doesn't break apart, fall apart. I can use it. The next thing it's fungible. I like that word. Fungible, meaning that if I have $1, it equals $1 worth of whatever it is I want to buy, right? So the values are equal. It's also divisible. You can break it down. You can tens, fives, ones, 20s, 50s, hundreds. You can divide that. You can break it up, right? And last but not least, it's a store of value. Now, that last piece was absolutely the key piece. The key difference between real money and the money we have right now circulating. For most of you guys, the money you have in your pockets right now. The currency you think you have in your pocket has no store of value. Meaning, doesn't hold its value. It actually loses value. In this case, the dollars you guys have in your pockets loses value every single year in the form of inflation. The hidden tax, as most people like to call it. So you're talking about, Drew, hey, what are you talking about? You're saying my dollar's not money? What the heck does that mean? What do you mean my dollar's not money? I mean, your dollar is a currency. That's what I'm trying to get to you. It's not real cash. It's simply just a currency, because a currency loses value every year. The more money they put into the system, the less money the money in your account is worth, the less value it is. So what are examples of real money then? Well, you got gold, silver, precious metals, right? But another form of currency that a lot of people don't talk about, and I don't see this a whole lot, but it's your time. Your time. Yes, your time is money. Because if you really think about it, your time is literally what you're trading for that money. So that in itself is a form of currency. For a lot of you guys listening, there's one thing I want you guys to do. And I've started doing this, and it's paid dividends throughout my life. It's changed the way I've seen things. It's changed the way I even interact with people. And that is to start literally thinking as your time, the little time you have, as physical currency. That's what you have to start doing. Because here's what happens with, just like physical money, like your time, you can choose to invest in things that could potentially give you a better return, right? So if you think about it, I have all this time right now, finite, limited, because you don't have a whole lot of it, which makes it a true store value, because you don't have a whole lot of it. You can waste it, you can't get it back. Gold, silver, you can buy those, you can get those. Currency, you can get those. But your time, it's gone. So for a lot of you guys, start thinking, if I put time and X into this, what am I going to get out of it? And if the end result, is it going to help me succeed, or is it going to waste my time? Because I'm never going to get that money back, ever. Like a loan, right? You give your loan, your employment for 10, 15 years, you trade your time for those 15 years for whatever dollars they give you, right? And it's up to you to figure out if that's what it is that you want to invest your time in. But for a lot of us, let's start getting to the habit of thinking of our time as a valuable resource, a valuable form of money, because it literally is. Now, what does this all mean, right? Well, think about it. In the past, like back in the 1900s, early 1900s, guess what? That dollar you had in your pocket, that physical currency you had in your pocket, that was worth 1 ounce of gold at some point in time. And the feds came in, and then they printed throughout those years from 1917 all the way down. It might be actually earlier than that. To now, where our physical currency is literally worth nothing, a fraction of what it used to be, right? To even think about it now, that same, back then in the 1900s, that same dollar that could have bought you an ounce of gold, you need about $2,000 of that to buy 1 ounce now. If that doesn't show you how useless your currency has become over time, I don't know what is. And then for some of you guys out there who are older, maybe you're in the boomer category, or a little older than that, where you remember a time where, hey, I can get a burger for a couple cents. I remember one guy used to tell me that a burger used to cost me 39 cents. 39 cents? What the hell? Can I go back to where you from? Like, let's hop on it. Let's go back in time. Where you from? 39 cents for a burger? It's $5 for a Big Mac now. $5 for a Big Mac, depending on when you live, right? Back then, 39 cents. So if that doesn't show you how worthless, how less of much of a purchasing power that your money has right now sitting in your pocket, I don't know what else to tell you. But it's not looking good. And now we're getting to a point where we're thinking about throwing another $5 trillion into the system because of what's going on right now. We're thinking about all that, right? And for a lot of our leaders, they're not thinking of the long-term consequences of that decision. They're not thinking about that, right? Your politicians, your leaders, they're not thinking about the long-term consequences. Do you know what they're thinking about? No, seriously, do you want to know what they're thinking about? I don't want this mess to fall apart on my watch. That's what they're thinking about. Exactly what they're thinking about. Because if it falls apart in their watch, you're not voting for them. And in the end, that's literally what it comes down to. Trading your productivity for dollars. Your future productivity for dollars. Your future productivity, right? Because think about it. If they print more money and your money's sitting in the savings account, well, that just diluted the pool, and now your purchasing power isn't as much as it was. Sitting in your bank account, having your money lose money, and no one's touching it. How crazy is that? So you got to understand the scheme that's being played right now. And that's leading to a whole lot of huge issues within our economic system that a lot of us should really start to pay attention to, right? And particularly, one thing that a lot of people I don't see a whole lot of people talking about right now is money velocity. Money velocity. I'll say that again. Now, let me break down for those of you guys who don't know what money velocity is, because this right here is a good indicator of where exactly this economy is headed. Now, for those of you guys who don't know what money velocity is essentially how fast your dollar moves across the economy, right? How fast it exchanges hands. So if you get paid, you go out, you spend it on goods and services, and let's say you go out, you get paid, you go buy a car, right? Boom. That money you just spent to go buy a car, that goes to the business that sold you that car. That business then deposited into their bank account. That bank account, then the bank takes a loan off of that deposit and loans it out to maybe another business or another person who needs a home. They do that and they take the money, they buy the home, and then that person who sold the home gets the cash, and then they put in the bank account, and the money travels throughout the economic system. So why is this incredibly important right now that we should start paying attention to this? Well, when money velocity is high, that's a good thing. That shows that the economy is actually active, that people are actually moving about, they're spending, they're doing things, they're making it happen, right? But it should start to get very, very worrisome when we start to see low money velocity. Because what that starts to reflect is that, hey, your economy is not doing too good. In fact, your economy is shrinking because people aren't spending money. People aren't moving about. They're not doing the things that they normally would do. So your economy is shrinking. I think we lost like 33% GDP. Highest we've ever lost. And why is that? We got people out of work. We got people at home now spending less money. Either they're spending less money or they're spending at the grocery store, which leads to another problem, which I'm going to explain later here. But people are spending less. People are out of work. People are buying groceries because they have nothing really else to do. They can't spend on entertainment. Entertainment's shut down all over the place, right? Well, you can go out to eat? No. Can't go to a restaurant. Most of them are closed. So people are at home. Maybe spend it on, Netflix, Hulu, Amazon. That's why some of those companies, they're doing good. Everyone's flocking to them. But realistically, people are broke. People are unemployed. People are about to go homeless, which I'll explain later. And people are not spending. So when you have all these factors put together, you can see how our economy is shrinking. When people talk about the economy, they think about it as some kind of like outside tool, some kind of abstract thing. No, no, you are the economy. You are the economy. Think about where you are right now in life and with your finances. What are you doing? Are you going out spending the same way you used to before this whole thing broke out? Are you? Chances are you're not. Chances are you're probably figuring out how you can save a buck. That's definitely what you're doing. That's what majority of people are doing, right? So now we talk about a lot of people, all they're doing is basically, hey, you know what? I got to save my money. I got to spend less. And if all I got to do is buy groceries, well, I guess I'm going to buy groceries. It is what it is. So now you got a lot of people who either they have access to additional money or and that's via like, stimulus packages and things like that. But what do they end up doing? They go grocery shopping. They stock up on food. Food. We are experiencing currently right now inflation in food market. And part of the reason that we are experiencing that is because people who are spending less are spending more on food right now. And people think about this, while people are spending more on food and groceries, we have a disrupted supply chain. So we don't have that much inventory coming in to most of these stores. We don't have that. Because what this outbreak exposed to a lot of us is that, matter of fact, we don't have shit. We never did. Matter of fact, I didn't find out till a couple months ago when all this started going down that our majority of our drugs were made there. Were made in China. So, I'm sorry, what in the heck do we actually do in this country? No, seriously. Because if you think about it, a great economy means that its people have to be productive. If it turns out this whole time no one has been productive, everyone's just been doing service jobs and says no one has been doing hardcore production, manufacturing, because we don't have that here. We didn't. We've been gutted. And that's what this exposed. So now we have a huge disruption in our supply chain. We got people who are losing their minds. They're buying food. They're trying to get that stuff taken care of. All of a sudden, now food prices are going up. Beef prices are going up. Egg prices are going up. Because when you have a limited supply, but you have more prices chasing that limited supply, the price has to rise to meet that demand. It's simple. I'm not saying it's easy for some of you folks out there, but it's simple concept to grasp. If a lot of people with money are chasing goods that are limited, the prices will rise. And that's what we see now. I got an article here I want to read for you guys, right? Wholesale prices rise for boxed beef, signals retail pain for consumers. All right, this is a Forbes article. As if the threat of empty shelves in the meat section isn't enough to rattle the nerves of grocery shoppers everywhere, the price of the meat consumers do manage to find will likely be higher as well. The broken food supply chain for meat-based animal protein is creating a shortage of availability of processed beef and pork. For both home cooks and fast food junkies alike, prices in the wholesale beef markets have already begun to signal the retail price pain to come. The entire meat process business hinges upon a relatively small number of plants that slaughter live animals, cut them fairly into large pieces, and then put them in boxes for resale to butchers and institutions where the pieces are broken down even further for distribution. But many slaughterhouses are closed due to COVID-19 infections, and their workforces are leaving the farm. Prices for live animals are falling flat, and the price of boxed meat are soaring in wholesale markets. So basically what I just explained earlier, but in this case, these guys kind of go into depth and what's going into what's happening in the meat industry. So essentially what's going on is that right now you have a lot because of the disruption in the supply chain and the disruption that this outbreak has caused us, right? We are in a situation right now where people aren't even working at those factories to process our meat. People aren't there to slaughter the animals that we need for our beef. So what happens when we have that kind of disruption? Well, your beef prices rise. And some of you guys can say, okay, well, we can find alternatives and stuff like that, which is cool. And most people will. That's what most people do. So if beef is too expensive, they're going to put their money in different spots. Maybe chicken, turkey, things like that. What happens to those prices? This affects everything. So let's continue on. This is a dream come true. For a few traders and hedgers who can sell live animals and buy boxed meat in an arbitrage trade. But farmers and consumers will not fare so well, as farmers face the prospect of falling prices for live animals that cannot be processed due to plant closures. Retail shoppers and restaurants face the unimaginable in America: low meat availability and higher prices. That's ridiculous. So right now, if you're a small, agile business, you're the one who are making it. Essentially, you are skimming through the cracks and you are making it happen. But for those of the normal, regular farmers out there, it's good luck. That's what it is. Another thing that I wanted to talk about too is the homelessness that we're about to face, the mass homelessness we're going to see. Because for those of you guys who don't know, the eviction moratoriums ended not too long ago. And for those of you guys, what that essentially means is that is supposed to protect you from getting kicked out of your own home. Now, I believe there was an extension on it. I think it ended in July, but they extended it through an executive order. But think about this. People throughout this entire time, mind you, that only got one payment of $1,200. Your courtesy of your politician that cares. One-time payment of $1,200 are now left with the option of either putting food in their mouths or going homeless. And now, once this thing ends, the extension and our dear leaders have not come to a resolution that's beneficial for the American people, yeah, you are going to see a lot of people homeless. So I got an article talking about the eviction crisis here that I want to go over because I think it's very important. The clock is ticking on a looming national housing crisis. Starting August 24th, millions of renters who were shielded against the eviction by the CARES Act will no longer be protected. Add that 30 million or so workers on unemployment who lost the $600 per week federal enhancement. And a result of that, nearly half of all U.S. renters may be at risk of evictions. Nearly half of all U.S. consumers may be homeless because your leaders don't want to do anything. Or not that they don't want to do anything. Well, I mean, they're on vacation right now, I think. Right? Yeah. So we're trying to figure out if people should be in their homes or not, and your leaders are on vacation right now. So it shows you how much they care. But how crazy is that? Almost half of the country might go homeless. This is serious, guys, right? Without further protections or assistance, that means that 40 million people could be displaced from their homes over the next year. According to Aspen Institute, all the midst of the worst economic recession since the Great Depression, some states may still offer temporary emergency eviction protections, but many, like California, eviction stay may end soon. Adding to the confusion, President Donald Trump executive order about evictions, which isn't a renewal of eviction protections, as a text excerpt below makes it clear. It isn't known exactly when or in what form a new eviction moratorium might happen. Without the assistance of future stimulus package, the situation could worsen. We're going to walk through everything we know, from the president's executive order to how to find out if your home is protected under current law. Okay, so basically, it's looking like if your leaders don't come up with some kind of plan soon, right, to figure out how to keep people in their homes, you're going to have a lot of people out of work. You're going to not even out of work, people out of their homes. which is a serious thing. You're going to have a lot of homeless people out there. Guys, when we talk about on this channel that no one is going to take care of you, no one is going to be there to save you, you got to be the change that you want to see. It all starts with you. When I read stuff like this, right, it just further reinforces the fact in my mind why people should be more self-sufficient. Why people should be a lot more self-sufficient, not only about themselves, their well-being, but also their finances. Think about it. If a lot more people were responsible with their finances, a lot more companies, I'm not just going to even come at people, I'm going to come at companies too, because some of y'all corporations, some of y'all be on some BS. Some of you guys make terrible lending or investment decisions with debt, and now you want us, the taxpayer, to bail you out. So some of y'all deserve that pain. But for the vast majority of us, it sucks. But we didn't take that time to prepare, to save, to cut back, to spend less, to think about future prospects. We didn't take that time to understand where we want to go. And now we have reached a state where almost half of Americans, half of this country, we're going to be dependent on what the government says next. How scary is that? Putting your future in someone else's hands. Wake up. Wake up, America. Wake up. Things are changing. Things are changing fast. There are apartments right now that are vacant in New York, LA, all these other places where things are already pitting the fan. People are fleeing these big cities in droves. Wake up. It's a different world out there now. And it's time for you guys to have that mentality of we got to get it. We got to get it. We got to get at it. Because if we don't, there's going to be a lot of pain coming soon. So right now, the way I see it, I'm pretty sure if it's going to be any good news that they're going to come up with something, because we also forget that there's an election year. And like I said earlier, no one's going to want this thing to tank on their boat, right? It's bad for business if it tanks on their boat. So there's going to be some kind of a package coming soon. They're going to bats at it right now. I think Democrats want $3 trillion. Republicans want $1 trillion or $1.5 trillion. I don't give a damn. I just want you guys to help the people. That's it. Help the people, because half of the people going homeless, that's a big problem that we are not prepared for. So there's definitely going to be something coming down the pipeline to help Americans soon. And I hope that this little time that we've been given right now, we take it. We take it as the opportunity for what the opportunity is, to basically better ourselves, better our situation, better our circumstances, meaning get your body in order, get your body fit, right? We're in the midst of a pandemic right now that attacks people who are physically unhealthy or immunely deficient, right? So start taking the steps. You got to take responsibility now, right? Start taking those steps to start figuring out, hey, what can I do to make sure that my body's good, my tempo's all right, so when stuff like this happens, I have a better chance of faring well, versus others who don't take that time to build their bodies up. Okay, now what can I do with my finances? What can I do right now with my finances to make sure that when stuff hits the fan, that at least I have something that can protect me and my immediate family? Because that's the move that we got to start thinking about right now. So we got to take this little time that we have to build that. And once we've built that, it's all about adapting at this point. Because there's going to be a lot of random things coming, and it's going to feel like a lot of stuff's coming out of nowhere, but you got to be ready to adapt. Because it's going to come fast, and it's going to come hard. That's what she said. All right, so we're going to end it on that note. So our next segment is going to be pretty devastating. I'm sure some of you guys have already heard this in the news, and yeah, it's truly tragic what happened. And I'm talking about the situation that happened to young Cannon. a 5-year-old who was murdered by I believe, 25-year-old African American, and there's a lot of controversy surrounding this, and I want to just throw out what I think about it. My thoughts on this and what I'm seeing, the potential pitfalls and distractions that this particular incident is causing us, and basically how we can come together using this situation rather than further drive a wedge between each other. And before we get into that, for those of you guys who are just tuning in, first of all, welcome to the Deviant Core podcast. And if you want to watch the video, full length videos, go ahead and head on over to our Facebook, the Deviant Core podcast. Subscribe and like our page, and then join our group, the Deviant Core podcast group, to get access to the full length and not just clips on a page. You can also go to our YouTube at the Deviant Core podcast. Go ahead and subscribe to our page. Go ahead and like the video and support us any way, shape you can. And really, we're just looking for you to share the video and like it. That's it. That's it. Spread the word, baby. That's all I want, right? For you guys who want to listen to the full-length episode, we're also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, we're on Overcast, and Stitcher. So go ahead and check us out there at the Deviant Core podcast. Now, let's talk about the situation, because this actually really hurt my heart. Just more senseless violence that we should really be all going to the opposite direction, but in this day and age where people are in the most stressful position, where people are in tough spots, it's getting to the point where, yeah, things are getting pretty crazy out there now. Things are getting pretty weird, and we have to prepare because people are getting dangerous. You can't even trust your neighbors anymore. So let's get into this. The family of Cannon Hyatt, I'm mispronouncing the name here, will never get over the loss of their little boy. The 5-year-old was shot and killed by a neighbor while riding his bike in Wilson, North Carolina. Last weekend, according to police. We shouldn't even be here, Cannon's grandfather said. He told ABC News that Cannon was the type of kid that will always be polite, laid back, and he was a beautiful little kid. Cannon's family said that they were preparing to send him to kindergarten, which was set to start this week, but instead they spent their time receiving the more than 100 cars who arrived for his funeral. That's sad. 5-year-old who knew what his future could have been, ripped from us. He was a loving child. He loved to go into church. He lit up many rooms he walked into. I mean, any store we're in, he would just talk to a stranger. Austin Hinnant, Cannon's father, told ABC News. Hinnant said that the tragedy began as a normal day. They all wanted to go ride their bikes and enjoy Sunday afternoon, just like any other kid. 30 minutes later, said Hinnant, he heard the gunshots. He said he ran out to his front door. The first thing I see is my son laying on the ground, and it crossed my mind that maybe he just fell off his bike. As I got closer to him and scooped him up in my arms, I realized how horrific it was. I had to scoop my son up and hold him in my arms as blood ran down my arm. On all I could do was pray to God, said Hinnant. Cannon's 2 sisters were there, witnessed the tragic event. It's been very tough for my 2 daughters, says Hinnant. The young boy's killing has garnered international attention from people around the world have been using several hashtags related to Cannon's death on social media to send prayers, words of encouragement, and donations to his family. The alleged shooter, I'm not even going to say his name, what a scumbag, was arrested Monday after fleeing the scene, and now is in jail without bond, facing first-degree murder charge. Wilson police said it's unclear when his next day in court would be. We've been neighbors for 8 years, Hinnant told ABC News. We had just been cordial neighbors like anyone else. We would speak when we saw one another, and he may walk over and talk to me for a few moments, vice versa. On Saturday, the day before the fatal shooting, Kenneth's father had Sensims over for dinner. That's the guy. Hinnant told ABC News that they shared a beer together on the porch, and his demeanor seemed fine. But he said Sensim also seemed paranoid about an event that happened Friday night. He looked like he had a lot on his mind, and I was cooking in the kitchen. I was cooking chicken on a grill, so I invited him over into my home. We were supporters of God, and I just told him that. God tells us to love our neighbors, said Hinnant. The family says they intend to hold a vigil in the near future, but it's taking time now to mourn and heal. That is crazy. That is nuts. That shouldn't have happened. Bad things do not deserve to happen to good people, but unfortunately it does. And that's the thing. And for those of you guys who are just tuning in, this young man and his family First of all, he did not deserve to be murdered the way he was. He really did not deserve what happened to him. And it turns out that the guy who did the murder was arrested, and he's going to be facing first-degree murder charges. But here's the thing. What I'm seeing now, especially on social media, we're seeing this young man, the situation, the circumstances surrounding the thing that happened, the tragedy that happened to this young man, is being used right now as a political tool of hate. We got two sides right now where people who are on one hand comparing this to what happened to George Floyd. And for those guys, I'm sure, unless you've been sleeping under a rock, you know what happened with the whole George Floyd incident. A black man who was murdered by a white police officer, right? And in this case, with Cannon, it was a white child murdered by a black man. Now, what I see, and a lot of people should be taking the time and pausing and paying attention, is, first of all, these two situations are two completely different things, two completely different scenarios. And I think it is absolutely disingenuous to try to make a comparison solely on the base of race. Now, people are saying, well, Drew, what are you talking about? Well, a lot of people are wondering, okay, well, why isn't getting this a whole lot of media attention? And that is true, right? And I'm glad that a lot of people are slowly starting to wake up to the media manipulation that is going on. On one hand, one story is being pumped up, right? One story being flared. On the other hand, one story isn't getting as much attraction, right? But the one thing people are failing or are doing right now and failing to understand, that you can't compare apples to oranges here, all right? You have to judge these two incidents on their own right, because otherwise you're just judging it based off of race. Here's what I mean by that, right? We're pissed off that George Floyd died, and there were mass nationwide protests and riots going on with that, right? That came with it, and it was awful. And now the issue with George Floyd is that, let's just be real, this stuff has been happening to people like George Floyd for years, right? When you see a protest, riot break out in the manner that it did, that means that something like this has been happening for years to those specific communities. And not even just those communities, but to people who are economically disadvantaged. Just being real. I've lived in poor neighborhoods. I've seen poor Hispanic people. I've seen poor white people with the boot of the government on their necks. With the boot of the government on their necks. Meaning, if you don't have economic resource, if you're not economically important or valuable, the government puts their knee on your neck, just like they did with George Floyd. In that scenario, we're talking about police brutality. We're talking about the government abusing their power on innocent civilians. That's what we're talking about. In this situation with Cannon, judging it based on itself, the individual situation that happened. Let's look back into the story, right? The father, the day before the murder happened, noticed that there was a change in this man's demeanor and behavior and his mental state. He was paranoid. He didn't know what was going on, right? So invited him over, had a beer, and tried to make him feel better, which is the neighborly thing that you can do. And before you know it, this man murdered a 5-year-old. Now, the reason why this is different, because you don't have a natural occurring history of black people or black men murdering white kids, white 5-year-olds. There isn't a huge slew of repeated offenses of black people murdering white kids. You don't see that, right? The most common thing you see is police officers shooting and abusing black people or just poor, economically disadvantaged people. It doesn't even have to be color. And it's really not a color thing, a whole lot. Most of it is, but a piece of it isn't. It's just, if you're broke, if you're powerless, you're going to be abused by someone who has power because they know you don't have those resources to defend yourself against the state. In this case, you had a man who's dealing with some shit and decided to murder a 5-year-old child. So don't make that comparison on why there's not a national riot or national protest about this and compare it to the George Floyd thing. Because some of the posts I've seen out there, it's ridiculous, and it doesn't justify that because they're two different scenarios. You're comparing two different things, and what that does is divide us because it puts everyone else in their own corners now. Everyone's like, oh, well, this kid, why is this story not being shared? And let's just be real. Out of any other example that you could have chose, there are plenty of examples of black cops shooting white people, white men. Literally, if you want to make an apples to apple comparison, there are plenty of black cops and stories of black cops shooting white men. So I agree with you. Why isn't the media making a big fuss about it? Why isn't the media making a big fuss about that? So I agree with you on that. But don't compare this. Because when a black cop murders a white man, that's the same thing as a white cop murdering a black man. So we can compare those two. We can say, okay, why is the media not talking about this issue, this situation, versus now they're talking about this situation? Like the situation with the I forgot this guy's name, but it was a guy who got murdered for answering the door at late at night when the cops showed up. Right, he can't answer the door with a gun, and the cops shot him within 3 seconds. That's a problem. That's something that we should be talking about. That's an apples to apples comparison. And you know what that the uniting factor of is? The uniting factor is the state is killing us. Whether you're white or black, the state is killing you. So that's a common problem. With this guy that murdered a 5-year-old, first of all, a couple things, because I don't like to be rash in my judgments, right? They said this guy had a paranoid thing going on before he pulled the stunt that he pulled, as tragic as it was. Let's also understand that we are in the age of everyone's talking about mental illness. So, right, I've seen situations, and I don't want to get into the fray, but I'm going to just point this out. I've seen situations where there maybe a young white kid goes into a church and shoots everyone else and gets treated a certain way versus the opposite happens, right? Okay, maybe he had mental issues. Maybe he had this. Maybe his parents were. So we try to explore all the other aspects of that rather than going after the particular race and color of that kid that shot up a church. And those of you know what I'm talking about, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So we don't focus on a race there. So for me, I'm not going to focus on just purely the race in that situation. Those of you guys who are following and focusing purely on the race in that situation, that tells you where your priorities lie. But when I look at that, I say, okay, this person, does he have a history of mental illness? Does he have a history of any kind of issue whatsoever? I want to know what happened that made him paranoid. That's what I want to know. That day that Cannon's dad invited him over for a beer and grilled out with him. I want to know what was going through his mind to make someone react that way. And you know what? If it turns out that this person isn't crazy or doesn't have any mental issues whatsoever, well, guess what? Turn off the lights. That's right. Get rid of them. Scumbags like that who kill children don't deserve to walk amongst the normal people around here. So I'm well in support of that. Get rid of that. And guess what? He was arrested and charged immediately. So that's another big distinction between those two stories. So rather than you guys sharing things like that to further divide yourself into corners, let's just find things that unify us, for example. For example, is, hey, the media is complete on some BS right now. That's a unifying subject. Police brutality against American citizens. I don't care about the color. That's a unifying force. So let's start focusing on the things that put us together than the things that drive us apart. Everyone right now watching this video and listening to this podcast, you guys will agree with me that the murder of this 5-year-old boy, this young boy who had so much ahead of him, was wrong. Was absolutely wrong. We can all agree to that. So let's all come together for this young man and the tough situation that his family is going to end up going through. Let's come together for the family and not allow ourselves to be used as political pawns, because that's what this is. Allow the media to further drive a wedge between the people. Let's just honor the family and their loss. Let's spend that time doing that. Let's focus on the unifying force. Let's be disciplined enough to focus on the unifying force. None of the separation stuff, because we're in a time period right now where we cannot afford to be further divided. We're heading in some dangerous territory, and we cannot afford to be further divided. So we got to start figuring out ways to work on this. And that's my 2 cents on it. I just want to throw that out there because of how horrible the situation is. And no family deserves to go through anything like that. This gentleman was sick, and I hope they get the justice they deserve. In this case, it looks like they're going to go get it. And I hope this guy gets, if we figured out, come to find out, he's not crazy. And because you don't just snap and kill a 5-year-old. You don't just, I'm sorry, that's not something you do unless there's something seriously wrong with you. So we got to figure that crap out first. What's going on? And if it turns out, hey, you were just having a bad day, but you took it out on a 5-year-old kid and pull his brains out, well, guess what? You got to go. You got to turn off the lights, buddy. It's over with. It's over with. You don't do that in a society. That's against the rules. It's against the rules. You broke the rules. Simple as that. Get rid of them. And that's my 2 cents on that. So for those guys who just tuning in, first of all, thank you so much. Welcome to the Deviant Core podcast. We got last and final story here. Right now, Epic Games in the news, right? And Epic Games, if you guys don't know, there's a situation surrounding. Ooh, that hit real quick. There's a situation surrounding Epic Games right now in terms of them in a ongoing lawsuit with Apple. So how is this going to turn out? Well, I got a couple of ideas here on what's going to happen. And stay tuned here. What could the potential consequences that can arise from this? Yes, folks. There's going to be some serious consequences coming out of this pretty soon if you guys aren't paying attention. So before we get into the story, those of you guys who are just tuning in, first of all, welcome to the Deviant Core podcast. I am Drew Dukes, your host. And for you guys who are watching the video, please like our videos. We're also on Facebook. We're on YouTube. Go ahead and subscribe. Like our videos, like our page. Help us grow. Help us flourish. Help us share the word. And if those of you guys who are just listening, go ahead and head on over to Spotify at the Deviant Core Podcast. We're also on Apple Podcasts. We're also on Overcast and Stitcher. So go ahead and head on over those platforms and subscribe. Support. All right. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. So for those of you guys who are not aware of what's going on right now, Epic Games have filed I believe, lawsuit against Apple. Now, here's what's going on. For those of you guys who don't know, Apple obviously has this thing called an App Store. So does Google. They also have this thing called the Play Store. And this is where you go and then go get apps and things like that. So to break down the situation, what's essentially happening is to have your app, let's say you as a company develop an app, to have your app on that platform, whatever fees you charge for your consumers who are using your particular app, you charge, Apple takes about 30%. Google takes about 30% just for you to be on their platform. They take about 30% of your profit. So what Epic Games decided to do is said, hey, you know what? Fudge this. Fudge it. We're not doing this, Apple. We're not doing this right now. So what Epic decided to do is they decided to create their own payment platform that bypassed the App Store and had their customers pay them that way to cut out the middleman, essentially. And Apple responded by Thanos slapping them off of the platform. In this case, which is huge deal for Epic Games because Apple, I mean, that company is pretty much, I mean, they're $1 trillion company, first of all, and just about everyone has their hardware. So it's yeah, you if you lose access to their app store, that's a pretty significant market share that you're losing out on, essentially. So the way it works now, for those of you guys who have, I believe it was a Fortnite game. I'm not a huge gamer. I don't game, but I believe it was Fortnite. And so those of you guys who still have the Fortnite game or the app, you can still on your iPhones, you can still play it and use it and whatnot. But for new people who would like to download it, it's not going to be available until they come up with some kind of resolution for this. So that's initially the breakdown of it. So why is this very important? Well, first of all, it's got a bunch of different implications depending on who wins this lawsuit here, right? For those of you guys who don't know, Apple currently, Google, and Amazon, Twitter, some of these other big media, not media, but social media platforms are under investigation right now for potential antitrust violations or anti-competitive behavior violations. And for those of you guys who watched the hearing, by the way, how ridiculous was that? Our politicians are just this is interesting. But anyways, they're under this investigation right now, which pretty much all eyes are on them. All eyes are focused on them. So here's why this has a couple different implications for them, and it can go both ways. First of all, Apple has a lot of money. Okay, Apple has a ton of money. Like money, real money. They're $1 trillion. They're not playing around. They're a big company, all right? Epic Games, now they're no small fry too. I know they're trying to like play this off as a little guy versus the big guy type of thing going here. But don't let it fool you. Epic Game is a multi-billion-dollar company. Okay, believe that. So if anything, this whole thing going on, in my opinion, right, it's just corporations wanting more money. That's it. Epic Games, they're tired of paying 30%, which in their defense, all right, it's a little bit high, Apple. Come on. And the issue with Apple right now is that Apple, it's particularly with Apple, why they're underneath such a strong scrutiny, is the nature of the way their app store is set up. So in order to purchase apps versus Androids, you literally have to directly go through the Apple store. You can't buy an app anywhere, any other way but going through the Apple Store. I think with Androids, it's a little different. You can go through the Play Store. You can go through certain different apps to purchase whatever app you want, app stores to purchase whatever app you want. But the Apple specifically locks it down to their store, which gives it a sense of a monopolistic type of thing going on there, and that's why there's an extra microscope on Apple at this point. But if anything, I think that fee's a little high. It's a little high. So in Epic's defense, I understand where they're going. And what I see right now with this situation going on is that, like I said, Apple got money, right? And Epic, you're a big company, but you ain't got money like Apple. So this is looking like, a one-sided ordeal here, especially if you got Google involved, because I believe they're suing Google too as well. They're two Goliaths, man, right? So here's the implication if they lose this lawsuit. Well, first of all, then it emboldens Apple. It basically says it right then and there that, hey, yeah, we're in charge now. We can do whatever the heck we want. Matter of fact, we might just up the app fee to 40%. We take in 40%. And guess what? Ain't nothing y'all gonna do about it because the courts already made us justify. So that can have future implications for the company, for future companies who are potentially going to be coming on in the future. And what it does is it kind of puts to sleep the kind of anti-competitive stuff that they have going on right now. Not just Apple, but Amazon does the exact same BS too as well. But then it takes the heat off of them, and it emboldens them to make more of these decisions that are pretty much anti-competitive. But what if they don't win? Right? Now, some of you guys are saying, Drew, what are you talking about? What do you mean, what if they don't win? Apple's huge. You just said it yourself. They're a big company. I mean, there's no way a little fry like Epic Games is going to beat them, right? Come on. There's no way. Unless other companies join in. That's right. If you have a slew of smaller billion-dollar cap companies coming in, also filing the exact same kind of suit or joining in on the same suit that they're going after these big companies, then you're probably going to see some changes. And that might be a little bit different. It might be actually to the slight detriment of Apple and Google, right? Slight detriment because, let's say if they lose, this might actually force them to open up a little bit, open up their stores. It might even force whoever's looking into this whole Apple situation, this whole big tech situation, to pay a little bit closer attention to what's going on with Apple, and they might uncover more anti-competitive behaviors and actions against other companies than they would like to bargain, which can open Apple up to more money loss. I think they're facing a $500 million suit right now. But it's gonna be a huge game changer for some of these big, massive companies if they were to pretty much lose by having Epic Games, if they recruit some of these other smaller companies to join the board. So then that way you have a bunch of little money going after the big money. But what do I think about all this? Again, I've said it before, it's just a bunch of corporations that want more money. I know they're going to try to paint it as the little guy versus the big guy. We're taking on the underdogs, whatever. Realistically, they're $1 billion company. So is Apple. You're $1 trillion, right? So they're both making money. It's just that on one hand, one company, justifiably so, is sick and tired of 30% being taken away from them. Now, on the other side, on Apple's side, on Google's side, look, man, if it's my platform and I say 30%, 30% goes. So I mean, if you're really rational and reasonable about this, I mean, it can go either way. It can go either way. I see both sides of it. I don't think it's anything that, you know, people should really, you know, scream about or, you know, get worked up about. You know, if Epic loses, well, it might be a little bit different, but. It's just realistically, it's just companies going after each other for more money, and that's pretty much with that. But it's interesting story to see see how this plays out, see who comes out on top, and see where the future of gaming and mobile apps on these platforms, these big major platforms, it's interesting to see where they go from here. With that being said, that was our last and final story of the day. For you guys who are still with us, thank you so much for sticking with us for this long. And we'll be back next week with some more crazy stuff going on in the media. Don't forget to head on over to our Facebook page at the Deviant Core Podcast. All right. And go ahead and go ahead and follow, support the page, help us grow. Head on over to our YouTube channel too, as well as the Deviant Core Podcast. Subscribe to our page, like our videos if you want to get access to some of these clips. And if you want to watch the full-length videos, go ahead and head on over to our Facebook group at the Deviant Core Podcast Facebook group, and go ahead and join the group, request to join the group. That way you can get access to the full-length videos of these podcasts too as well. For those of you guys who are listeners or want to listen, we're also on Apple Podcasts, we're on Stitcher, we're on Spotify, we're also on Overcast. All right, so go ahead and head on to those platforms at the Deviant Core Podcast and go ahead and follow and show your support. With that being said, thank you guys so much for following us this long, and we'll be back next week with some more. All right, take it easy. And we are good.